Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Haywood. I'm the Executive Director of Justice Forward Virginia. We're a criminal justice reform advocacy group, and we're here today to talk about police reform. Specifically, we have a series of explainer events that we're doing this summer called Get Informed About Police Reform, and this is part one. Just by way of introduction, about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, we actually had an event where Senator Serval, who's a guest tonight, spoke. He made a comment that I thought was kind of enlightening or profound, that Virginia really has never had a criminal justice reform movement. And that is becoming clear, I think, as we go down the road towards figuring out how to change our justice system. There is understandably, because we haven't done this before, there's a lack of information regarding what's wrong with our system and why. That lack of information is not just among the general public, it even exists among some parts of the legislature. The only way our movement is going to be successful is if people are engaged and informed. They must understand the legislative process, must understand the problems with Virginia's system, and we must know how we go about addressing them so we can implement real meaningful reform. So in the following weeks, we're going to be drilling down on 5 other topics, including pretextual policing or over-policing, police reforms that don't work, civilian oversight of law enforcement, the assault on law enforcement statute, and school resource officers, among others. This, however, is our introduction, and where we're going to be talking more generally about the process, where things stand with criminal justice reform in the legislature, and what we have coming up and what might be on the table for an upcoming special session. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Ashley Shapiro, who's one of our leadership team members, to introduce our guests.
All right, good evening, everyone. So we are lucky to have with us 2 leaders in criminal justice reform, both on the House and the Senate side here in Virginia. We have Senator Serval, who represents the Fairfax, Prince William, and Stafford County region. He's been a senator since 2016, but has been representing that area since he was in the House of Delegates in 2010. And he's been fighting for criminal justice reform pretty much that entire time. Senator Serval is the founding member of his own law firm, where he's a trial lawyer specializing in criminal justice, criminal cases, and traffic defense. And we have Delegate Scott, who's representing Portsmouth, Virginia. He was elected just in 2019, but he's already been proposing bold legislation and challenging the status quo over in the House. Delegate Scott also owns his own law practice where he's been specializing in civil rights and criminal justice.
So before we move on to our first question, I just want to give people who are new to this a quick primer, and I mean quick, it'll be less than a paragraph, about our legislative process. So Delegate Scott and Senator Serval are both members of our General Assembly. In the General Assembly, there are 2 chambers, the House of Delegates and the Senate. And they meet once a year, generally. Usually they meet once a year in a time that they call the session of the legislature. And that usually is January through March. And in Virginia, that's when all bills that become law are considered by the legislature and passed. This year, I think there were approximately 2,000 bills, and our 100 delegates and 40 senators had to consider all 2,000 bills in a period of about 60 days. So it's very much a sprint. And there's a whole lot to get done in a short period of time. So this year, before the 2020 session, we heard that the legislature, and specifically the Democrats, I think Delegate Scott and Senator Serval, a member of the Democratic Party, had big plans for criminal justice reform. And I'll ask you, Senator Serval, first. How did you feel about how criminal justice reform efforts went during the General Assembly session this year?
Thanks, Brad and Ashley, and it's always good to be on a panel with my new friend Delegate Don Scott and have his voice over in the House of Delegates. You know, I thought the session was we had a couple improvements, but it was definitely not as transformative as I had hoped. I sort of felt like when we passed some huge bills this session on all kinds of things. But I also felt like we made really big, huge accomplishments for lots of different groups. Like, you know, for women, we did the Equal Rights Amendment. We repealed the transvaginal ultrasound bill, some of the trap rules, things like that. On guns, firearm violence prevention, we made some big changes on firearms. The environmental community got a big energy bill, a really transformational one. Immigrant community, we got driver's licenses, which was my bill. We also got in-state tuition. But when it came to criminal justice, I felt like we only did some sort of modest changes. I mean, there was, the fishback rule was a big change. The codifying the getting rid of license suspensions, non-payment of fines. The governor did that, but locking that into the code was big. And we did some other stuff, but like the marijuana decriminalization, I sort of felt could have gone a lot farther and should have gone a lot farther than it did, but it was still progress. Decriminalizing that does make a difference, but I really felt like on the big stuff, we kind of kicked the can and didn't get as far as we should have. And I'm optimistic, especially now with what's happened in the last 3 months. We're going to see some real change here in the next 2 months, and then again in our regular session. But it wasn't as transformational as I had hoped, especially compared with some of the other things that we did in other issue areas on short notice.
Delegate Scott, how about you? How did you feel about how criminal justice reform efforts went during the session earlier this year?
I guess I'm a little different than Scott. I mean, I wanted to throw out, we did minimum wage. We raised we did that. That was a big deal. We did, we raised the threshold on larceny, which I think is, won't give people felonies that first time and give them the opportunity to learn. And then if it gets bad, then they'll be able to they'll get a felony then. I think we did some good things. I guess coming into this as a freshman, I'm not the grizzled old veteran that Scott Servell is. So my mentality was, I guess my expectations were already low. And so I can't be disappointed. I think that we did some earth-shattering stuff for where I knew we were. And so I think that was it, but I think we can do a lot more. And I think to do that, you have to put those ideas out. And some folks are just very cautious, and they want to make sure they get everything, perfect. And they want, so I'm one of those people, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. So we got to keep moving in the right direction. The only issue, and I said this before in regard to marijuana, is that we had to get something moved forward. I didn't want it to die because some people were so afraid to go so far. But I think now, with what's going on now in current events, I think we have a groundswell of support now. And I think if we don't get it done now, then we Democrats shouldn't be here. Bring the Republicans back and we're going with the status quo. I think now is the opportunity for us and there's some Republicans that agree with this too. They want to grow marijuana and make money in ag areas as well. There's an opportunity here now to continue to push this conversation in the right direction and decriminalize and legalize marijuana, but to make it fair. My issue my issue around marijuana, and we could talk more in depth later, was always about who we exclude from the opportunity to earn a living selling marijuana. Those same people who have become connoisseurs of marijuana and understand how to sell it and break it up, they may have a felony or something that then now when this comes time to license and sell, they can't do it. So we really need to look at that process and who's going to be excluded from now selling a product that had been legalized and benefiting from the economic windfall that will come to pass. So that was my only concern about immediately legalizing, and then we end up back in a position where the same people who are criminalized for it are now they can only be customers, and I have a problem with that. So that was the issue with that. Overall, criminal justice, I think we have an opportunity to be really bold. I'm hoping that people who are on this and listen to this, they will push us. They will push the delegates. People always contact me and write me letters. I got stacks of them. You know where I stand. I'm good. You got to work on those other 99 in the House to get them to come along with me. No need writing me. Write those people in your districts and those people in the state executive to tell them what you want, because you have me. So I think we need to make sure that we keep the energy up, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. That's why I'm excited to be here. How do we keep people educated and infused to keep the energy up, because this movement can dissipate and we get nothing.
So I'd like to turn to both of you. Mentioned that we can always be doing more and that the session we didn't get as much passed as we would have liked. Senator Servell, you talked about it being only modest reform. What did you see as some of the obstacles to progress this term?
Well, it was a lot of the similar kinds of things that I'd seen the last 10 sessions I've served. And Don's right. I've been beaten down for years now. my first 6 in the House was really bad, but even my last 4 in the Senate, when I got out of the Senate was always great. When I got over the House, it was just like banging your head on a wall. This year was better. There's no question it was better, but I'm not sure everybody realizes sort of how things work in Richmond. We're a part-time legislature. We're there for 60 days. We take 33 between, I think, 2,500 and 3,000 votes in that period of time. You got stuff going on every day. You're on multiple committees. You got your own bills you're trying to shepherd. We have very little staff. What staff we have doesn't provide us any kind of policy advice. So a lot of us are sort of shooting from the hip, trying to figure this stuff out. We have one lawyer in committees, sometimes 2, to give us advice if they think we're about to pass something really stupid or break a law or the Constitution or something. But usually when somebody catches a problem with a bill, it's often like a lobbyist or some speaker will come up and say, oh, by the way, did you notice these words here? This is in the wrong place or something. So, and for the last 11 years or the 10 years, there's really been an information asymmetry. And what I mean by that is that when a bill gets presented, I'll get up and explain what I think the reality is. And then the Virginia Commonwealth Attorneys Association would stand up and say, he's wrong, he's crazy, this is going to destroy the world, the world's going to come to an end. And then I'd look around behind me and there'd be nobody else to say that what I'm saying is correct. And so I'd have very little validation for what I was saying was wrong with the system. And I'm sitting there making a presentation to a bunch of my colleagues who are not lawyers, and many of whom are not lawyers, and they don't know what to think, and all they hear is problems, and they get nervous and say, I can't vote for that. And so it was good this year to at least have people like Brad, Ashley, and other members of the Justice Forward Coalition down there to validate some of the things that we see in court every day, to counter what we hear. And that was a big help. But I would still say the information asymmetry is still there. It's just, trying to explain to people what the problems are and how our system isn't functional. It's really hard for people to understand who don't practice within it. And I think we're even facing this moment today when we're getting a lot of pressure to reform policing. And I mean, policing it's a huge problem. But it's a problem that you see on body cams and on videos. And when people see it on TV, they see that. But what they don't see is what happened on video is what happens in the courthouse. And they don't see the charging decisions that were made. They don't see the plea discussions that go on. They don't see what happens at sentencing and what happens when somebody goes to prison and what happens in that prison. And so when you try to explain to people who have zero experience with any of this stuff, the reality of all this, it's really hard, and they need validation, which is what you all on this call and you all on this watching this video are all about. And so I'm hopeful that with that people's attitudes will start to change. And so, part of the problem is we don't have a lot of lawyers. The criminal subcommittee that Delegate Scott sits on, has 3 of the 5 Democrats are lawyers, 2 are not. So Delegate Watts has been on the courts committee for probably 20 years now. And so she's seen a lot, but she doesn't practice, and she's ready. She's always happy to admit that. Delegate Delaney just got put on the committee. She's not a lawyer, doesn't practice. She used to help criminal victims when she lived in Florida. But and the other attorney on there is a sitting Commonwealth attorney, Delegate Mullen. He's an assistant Commonwealth attorney in Hampton Roads. So, the lack of lawyers on there really, I think, especially amongst the members, makes it a lot harder to fact check people when they start coming up with a counter narrative to your bill. And the last thing I'll say is that I think a lot of members are just not used to talking about criminal justice reform. They're just not used to talking about it. I mean, when you run for office, you're ready to talk about reproductive choice. You're ready to talk about the environment. You're ready to talk about transportation policy. Everybody can talk about schools because they have experience with it. But criminal justice reform is just not something that people have life experience with, typically when they run. And so when it's time for them to have to make decisions about it as policymakers, it's a lot harder because they're not as well informed about it in a lot of ways. And so now that this has become such a big issue, front and center as it is, a lot of people are just finally starting to figure out where they are personally about it as members. I mean, they're just sort of used to defaulting. It's really easy to default that it's tough on crime thing and just be like, people said there were problems and I wanted to make sure and keep people safe and whatever. But now that people's eyes are starting to open to this, they're trying to figure out where they are on a policy level. And until they come down in a place, I think it's been hard for them to process some of these ideas. And sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but that's been some of the things I've seen.
I'll just chime in real quick because it was a perfect answer in my opinion, because that's exactly the information that people who are watching this need to hear. I think people don't realize what you just said, that the imbalance really and the lack of information, and that's the whole reason we're doing this. And that's all. Again, like you said, the reason we started this organization. And a thing that you didn't, I forget if you mentioned or not, was that traditionally this group called the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys has been opposed to criminal justice reform. I understand they're coming around to some of these ideas now, but they pay 4 of their members to be in every important committee every day of the whole session. There isn't a single public defender who is allowed to take, this year changed a little bit, but we're not allowed to do that. And nobody's paying us to do it. So when we go down to session, we're doing it on our own free time. And we need to either get, more support for groups like ours, or we need to get people more engaged and informed, volunteers, so they can show up, so they have the information to be able to stand up in a subcommittee and talk to the delegates who maybe aren't as familiar with the issues as Senator Survell or Delegate Scott are. So I appreciate you saying that, and this is a huge point of what we're doing here. So
I think we lost Delegate Scott for a moment there. Senator Survell, will you talk to us a little bit about
he's back.
There he is. So I'll go back to him. So Delegate Scott, we have a special session this summer coming up. Can you explain a little bit, who's ever present now, what a special session is and what the focus is going to be this year? So I think he's gone if you want to take it, Senator.
Okay. So, we can go back and Don can give us his view of the obstacles. But we're going to have a special session probably either in late August or early September. We have to go back and do our budget. Our budget completely imploded right after we adopted it. And so we basically came back for veto session and we unallotted a bunch of new spending we had done, which means we sort of took all the new spending and stuck it in a sort of exit ramp and we're holding it there until we come back and we know what our revenue projections are. And originally that was the only thing the session was going to be about. But I think we're also going to probably look at some slight adjustments for COVID. But the big thing is that I'm focused on is I think there's a real interest in focusing on criminal justice reform. I know my caucus wants to do it. Don's caucus is talking about doing it. I think they have some interest on their side. And I'm hopeful we can do some big stuff. I'm not sure how far we'll go, but we're definitely going to do some criminal justice reform this special session. So Don, you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're back. Good.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know. Damn cable bill. But look, the special session, I'm excited about it. It was originally supposed to be just for COVID. But with current events happening the way they are, it's a blessing to be able to live in interesting times and have an opportunity to address some issues that not only my mother thought about, but my grandmother and my grandmother's grandmother and my grandmother's grandmother. Generations have been dealing with these issues. It's amazing that we're in 2020 and we're still talking about Confederate monuments and all of that kind of stuff. So it's fun to be able to hopefully address some of these issues. I think, it's tough and it's fun. My issue, I believe at the special session, we cannot talk simply about police accountability without talking about the havoc that the police have played after they have reaped in our communities. But we can't say that police are, need to be accountable and that we know that they've been out of control now. Now we see it. It's finally here. I've known all my life, but now we see it. But let's just fix it moving forward. Let's fix it prospectively. We have to fix it retroactively. And if we don't fix it retroactively, and to me, criminal justice is how you fix it retroactively. One of the bills that I introduced, and I'm real loath to say I, me, because I think that you need everybody to get things done. So I may have, most of the time, the idea is not even mine. Somebody brought me the idea, and then I kind of look at it and say, oh, I like this. This is something I can champion. I run with it. And so it ends up being my bill, but it's not my bill. Once you put it in the public sphere, it's all of our bill. And we have to decide how hard we want to fight to get it done. Sometimes you have to fight some losing battles to make a point. I like to win, but I think I would rather be on the right side of an issue most of the time. And so one of the issues that I think we have to deal with in dealing with police accountability is understanding that we have now, and we've locked up, our incarceration rate in Virginia is higher than the United States incarceration rate. And the United States incarceration rate is the highest incarceration rate in the world. And Virginia is higher than that. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do about that? We have to begin to decarcerate and come up with other alternatives. It's difficult when Senator Servell was speaking, it is very difficult for people to wrap their minds around that. The first alternative is even to lock somebody up a long time. You have to understand how we got to this mass incarceration state to then begin to decarcerate. It's a financial incentive in locking people up. You know, there's a financial incentive. Our current Attorney General, who is the architect of our current criminal justice system now in Virginia, William Barr, he designed this system. He built this system. They had a study that he led as on the parole commission that said, how do we end parole and, you know, have more truth in sentencing? This was his deal that he did with, at that time, I think it was Governor George Allen. Y'all know who that is. Y'all know his infamous line. But these are the people that invented our current system that we have now inherited. We either have to continue to try to tweak around it and try to make a system that we know was designed. William Barr said this, Google it if you don't believe it. He said the most important thing that we can do to decrease crime is to build more prison infrastructure. That was his thinking. So there's no doubt when you build it, they will come. You got to fill them up. And as a financial incentive, you make money for guards, for food, for commissary. All of that is an economy within itself. And if you don't want to attack that economy, when you start attacking that economy, you're going to get pushback. You got to remember all of these folks eat off this system. All right. So they're not going to want to stop eating off this system. They may say in the back of their mind that it's something else, but that's what it is. And when you start talking about some of the people that some of my colleagues, all I got to do is say sex, violence, crime. Oh, no, they're not voting. They're not voting for anybody that might. Sex. Oh, no. Crime. Oh, rape. Oh, no, never. So if you say those words, you say those are buzzwords. Those are like Pavlov's theory. You say them, they just get electrocuted. Yeah, they drop. They're not voting for it. I'm telling you. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to reshape the argument in the conversation, because the folks who are the opponents of criminal justice reform, they use fear. That's their number one tactic. And we're trying to talk, you know, Senator Servell, we're trying to use common sense and use the data, and that doesn't have an emotive response. Fear is very highly emotional. You got a higher emotional response. Like, look, if I let out 20 of them, how many are gonna be rapists? Maybe one. No, we're not doing it. So that, you know, and if they are rapists, how long have they been in jail? Either we believe that jail rehabilitates and counseling and evidence-based stuff works, or we don't. So if we don't believe it, let's stop lying about rehabilitation. Just go and tell it's a punitive system. That's why I call it the criminal punishment system. It's not a criminal justice system, because there's no justice is restorative. All right. And our prisons punish and cause more criminal behavior. So we have to determine what we want to do with our dollars. We're investing a lot of money in infrastructure. We're investing a lot of money in great cages. We got great cages that lock folks up. And we got people with skills to watch people in cages. So we have to decide, is that where we want to continue to put our dollars, or do we want to reorient our money to stop having people benefit from watching people in cages? Last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to switch the subject real quick. We have to have an honest conversation about where these prisons are located. So when I talk about police accountability, I want to talk about you got to have cause and effect. Cause police, effect prisons getting filled up. Most of it people that look like me. You know, we're 19% of the population in Virginia. We're 55% of the prison population. So either I'm gonna say this again till my tongue falls out. Either you believe in the white supremacist theory that Black people are more inherently criminal, or you believe this system is inherently racist. I tend to believe the latter. And so we either have to decide that we want to do something about this system that is inherently racist, or do we want to continue to talk about the edges, which is just police accountability. That's one side of it. But we got to talk about the other side of it. And we got to talk about where these prisons are located and who benefits from them being out in the middle of the pond somewhere for job creation, economic activity. So we got to have a realistic conversation, but I digress. Go ahead.
So this is a great segue, and I really appreciate you talking about.
Brad, can I just say really quick,
Yeah.
with regard to what Don said, one of the things that opened my eyes about 4 or 5 years ago, there was an article in the Washington Post where one of my colleagues was interviewed and quoted lamenting the fact that a brand new prison in Southwest Virginia was empty. And he said, just think of all the jobs we could have. And I wanted to put my head in the wall, but that was a member talking on the record in the Washington Post. So I mean, just telling you, that's like the attitude that some people have. Don's exactly right about that.
Well, you're both framing the issue exactly the way Justice Forward sees this as well. And the way I've brought it up in other conversations is, when the events of the past couple months first started getting into the public sphere, I personally started getting worried because all of the conversation by the people who are kind of putting themselves in the spotlight were talking about these point of arrest things, and they're all good. Nobody should be choked when they're arrested. Nobody should end up with scars on them or dead when they're getting arrested. But we should have body cams to hold police accountable. But if we make all those reforms, at the end of the day, we're still going to have, 1 million Black Americans in jails and prisons in America. We're still going to have 1.5 million Black Americans on probation and parole. This is a system that tolerates excessive force on a regular basis, is a system that is broken at its foundations. So like Delegate Scott was saying, we got to start looking at this as a system-wide problem, and not just that we have a few bad apples, not just that we got to stop leaving people with scars or bruises on their bodies. We need to stop putting people in cages. And I think that Delegate Scott spoke eloquently about his priorities, and I know those were reflected in the list that was created by the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. And they were likewise echoed in the Senate's list. And I was hoping, Senator Serval, you could talk about that, how the Senate sees the problem here that needs to be addressed, and why you chose the priorities that you did in the list that your caucus published.
Thanks, Brad. So what we did was we sent out a request to every member of our caucus and said, what do you think we need to be looking at in this subject matter area? And well, first of all, the chairman of our House caucus chairman, Senator Locke, appointed a committee. There's 5 senators on it. I'm the chairman of it. And then our committee put out a call saying, what issues should we look at? We got back about 120, 150 suggestions from my colleagues, senators, which we then tried to refine. And we tried to focus on things that we thought were capable of being digested, processed, and voted on in a special session within about 60 days. And we haven't talked about this, but special sessions are different from the regular session in that we don't have all the time that we usually have to have big, long committee meetings. We don't have time for conference committees and be trading bills and negotiating. I mean, special sessions, a lot of stuff has to sort of be teed up and ready to go, or else it probably isn't going to go, because we just don't have time to sit around while we're all away from our jobs for an extra 1 or 2 weeks. For me and many other members, losing money or burning, leave time and burning taxpayer dollars to be there. Every day we're there in session, they're paying like $50,000 to the members and the staff and everything for per diems and stuff. And so we try to get everything ready to go and shot through as quick as possible once we get there. And so we had to focus on things that were not like super complex, that would take a huge amount of public vetting, a lot of editing. And so we narrowed it down to what we thought were about, it was about 25 or 28 ideas. And then we further moved those into buckets. So we have a police reform bucket. We have a racial profiling bucket. We have a sentencing reform bucket, a prison bucket. We have another category for, what was the other one? Expanding local authority. And we have another one about restoring courts and prosecutors' flexibility. And we tried to focus on things that members also were familiar with, proposals that had been introduced before. So they had already been through the committee process and had an opportunity for input and people to refine. Like, for example, Delegate Scott has a bill about earned sentence credit, which was introduced last year and it's been out there. The budget people have looked at it. The Sentencing Commission has looked at it and given us feedback. I know I see him laughing, but we could talk about, we should have talked about that as part of the impediments, by the way, is how the cost estimates are generated for these bills. You know, they always talk about what everything costs, but they never seem to factor in the how much money we save. My death penalty bill would save about $8 million a year of the capital. I mean, per biennium with the getting rid of the Capital Defender Service. But the only fiscal impact statement I got was it was going to cost taxpayers $60,000 to house two guys that would otherwise be executed. But that's the information we get before we make a decision in any event. But that was how we sort of tried to reduce it to a set of ideas that we thought we could work with. And as I said earlier, our caucus felt very strongly this could not be only police reform. It also had to be criminal justice reform, because if we were going to take a holistic look and make a real impact, we thought it had to be everything and not just about law enforcement. So that's what we did.
And Delegate Scott, you talked about some of your priorities. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the Legislative Black Caucus formulated its list?
Sure. I think, similar to what, Senator Serval rose. I mean, we kind of looked at we had several calls, several talks, several conversations about all of our priorities and the different buckets that we wanted to focus on. And, we tried to, obviously we wanted to deal with law enforcement excessive force. We wanted to deal with addressing combating racism. We had our different buckets. We had holding police accountable, try to get rid of some of the issues, qualified immunity and other things that allow police to do things without accountability, and allow the police force to then, or the cities to say, hey, he exceeded the scope of his authority and exceeded the scope of his employment. So once he broke a crime, we're not liable. Once he committed a crime. So we wanted to make sure that we got rid of, looked at that role. I'm gonna look at some of the things around having law enforcement and mental health folks determining who we send out. If you send out a hammer to every problem, then they're gonna treat it like a nail. And they're gonna go. Sometimes you got to send somebody else out to deal with some of these issues. We wanted to deal with SROs in schools. Wanted to look at continue to fight for some of the justice initiatives, like the parole, like the bill that we talked about, the good time, earned time credit bill. Look at the marijuana, and look at one of the big impediments to economic development in poor and under marginalized communities, which are expungement. We need to talk about expungement, and then obviously we wanted to continue to focus on the things that we need to focus on during COVID. Evictions, they're not stopping. Evictions, mortgage relief, and looking at who's getting treated as frontline workers or not, who's being treated as essential. So there was a time when we all had essential workers and they got hazardous duty pay, and now some of those companies have said, no, we're not going to pay you hazardous. So we got to continue to fight for those things to make sure that we'll protect those people who are most vulnerable, because they've been determined essential, but they're not being paid sometimes like they're essential. So we need to make sure that we protect all of those folks. Me, I'm a smart aleck lawyer. I found out I'm not so essential. My stock person at my grocery store is a lot more essential than I am, and I'm happy that they're there. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of those folks. But I think there are some big ideas across the board in the criminal justice area and police accountability area that we need to stay focused on. One of the things I fear when I just went through that long Christmas list, like Senator Serval did, we can lose our focus. And I think we got to be focused. I would rather, win 5 big things than lose 25 things that we put out there. So we need to really make sure that we hone in on those 5 or 6 things that we think, as Senator Serval said when he first got on the call, that are going to be transformative. He said he was hoping that there's some transformational stuff. I think we have an opportunity now to do 5 or 6 things that are huge in criminal justice reform and in holding police accountable. I know a lot of folks are using different terminology around police. I think police officers I speak to, they want to be held accountable. There's a weird line in the police force around, I heard you say one bad apple. There's a, when they say one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. And so what will happen is if you allow that poison to spread and there's no way to deal with it, then that's why you have some of the issues that we have with rogue officers doing stuff. When I say rogue, I mean, it's not a rogue officer like one, it's like 10 of them. And then like one is doing the act, but the other 9 are not saying anything. So, and they may not feel that way. So we have to call them out. And I don't want to keep saying that happens in the law enforcement community. It happens in a lot of communities where people work. You work with these people every day. You don't want to, get them in trouble. And that's usually what's happening. So we got to change the culture and change the accountability. As an attorney, Senator Sorville knows this. We have to have medical malpractice. I mean, we have to have professional liability insurance. We got to have malpractice insurance. We screw up, people can sue us individually. Right now, officers don't have that level of accountability. Somebody else has their back. And so if you're going to have this licensing process, that's something that we might want to think about. Another thing we have in the Code of Virginia, there's a called law, and I never heard of it. I had to look it up. I couldn't believe it. And y'all probably know about it. It's been around forever. It's called I'm sure Senator Serville knows about it. Law Enforcement Guaranteed Procedures Act, which means that if they get in trouble or anything, they
5
got
days.
They wait 5 days to have to make a statement. But then they get a lawyer. Then when they get to the grievance process, they get to pick. It's 3 people in the grievance process. They can pick one. They get to pick one of them. Their own. They don't have to go through a process, make sure they're fair and impartial. They actually get to pick a person that they know will not be impartial. And then the agency can pick a person. And then together, those 2 people who they pick the 3rd person. That's amazing to me. And everybody acts like this is normal. So, I mean, I think there are some things that we can do to change. And that's the guaranteed in Virginia. Now, municipalities can say, you know what, that's not enough protection. We want to do more. And many do. So they even have a high level of protection. And so, which has nothing to do with collective bargaining and wages. It just has to do with what you did on the job, whether something. So there's some things that we probably need to talk about in that area. And hopefully we will.
And Delegate Scott, you were talking about having to hone it in, and really we have this wish list. What specific priorities are you going to focus on in the Legislative Black Caucus just for this summer term?
So I can't speak for the caucus. That's Chairman Bagby and others, so don't get me in trouble. So, but I can speak about what my priority is. My priorities are, my priority continues to be giving people and families hope that if they do the things that they need to do while they're in jail. I'm really connected to people in jail and who want to come out and take care of their families and contribute positively to society. And I think a lot of people end up getting no hope because some of these numbers that these folks are getting an unbelievable amount of time. And so the earned time credit bill, there's already a 4-level classification system within the Department of Corrections. And what most people don't know, they think that in Virginia, you're supposed to do 85% of your time. So you get 15% off if you do what you're supposed to do, if you're classification level 1. But what we found out through the data is that only about 40-some-odd% of those folks actually get 15%. There are a lot of people that's doing all of their time. So because the system, if you don't do the things you need to do while you're there are no incentives. So you'll get 15, 10, 5, and 0. So what I want to do is raise that up. If year over year, if you do what you need to do, you can end up getting 50% of your time off after a certain year. 3rd year, you get 50% with no infractions, and you're doing all of the therapeutic and behavior and trade things that you're supposed to do, education, trade, therapeutic, and really do rehabilitation and give people an opportunity to get home faster if they do the things that they need to do. And so I wanted to redeploy what we have. And so I know that's not radical. That's just what they say they're supposed to be doing. So,
and that's obviously a bill that you already proposed this past session.
Yep, and it got
Can you
passed.
explain what happened with that bill this year?
I'm re-fighting for it again this year, and I'm hoping that folks will come and fight with me. When I introduced that bill last year, I just introduced the bill, and next thing you know, I was at a hearing, and it was 100 and some odd folks here. I looked back, I was like, who are these people here for? And they said, they here for your damn bill. I said, oh. So it was exciting because I was like, wow. So I know the energy is out there. And so I think it's up to organizations, it's up to folks like us, me and Senator Serville and Justice Ford and the other advocates to get those people to come out, because I know a lot of them are poor and they're struggling and they don't have the time to take off, and they don't have the disposable income to take off like a lot of these other organization. Those folks that come with all those guns and scare the hell out of everybody. They can take days off. They'll be like, I'm like, what do y'all do all day? Y'all can just sit here for 3 and 4 days. You know what I mean? Just camped out. And I mean, I wish that we can get our advocates, our people who want these things to change to come out, but they're so busy trying to just survive without family members and loved ones with them to help that they don't have the time. So it's up to us to do the most, amplify our voices. And I'm hoping that's what we can do.
And Senator Servo, what about you? What are your top priorities for the summer session?
Well, one, I think that's a no-brainer, which we have passed both under Republican control and Democratic control, would be to allow the parole board to consider letting people out, not requiring them to, just consider letting them out of jail if they are terminally ill or permanently physically disabled. And the Department of Corrections estimated that that population costs taxpayers about $29 million a year. And well, the idea to me that somebody who's terminally ill could be a danger once they're out is pretty nonsensical. And permanent physical disability, obviously, it can be lots of different things. But if you've got a pretty serious physical disability, I don't see you going out and, committing a bunch of crimes. That's one. Number two is, I think the assault on a law enforcement officer statute needs to be looked at. And that has really struck a nerve. There's been a lot of conservative media that has been trying to gin up people about it. And I've been getting a lot of communication about it. A lot of members have. But once I talk to people, the idea that you can get charged with a felony that carries a 6-month mandatory minimum for touching a person where there's no injury whatsoever is pretty astounding to a lot of people. And I've had a lot of people email me scenarios where police officer was struck by an onion ring or a brownie.
Do we have that slide on the screen right now with the examples?
Yeah. Is it? I don't know. I can't see your slide, but where, somebody is handcuffed and they move their shoulder and they get charged, or somebody in a straitjacket, somebody gets popped out of a heroin overdose with Narcan. They wake up coming out of an overdose and slap somebody's wrist away and they get charged with a felony. I have
actively being tased. So
right.
Is shaking.
Right. I can't tell you how many examples I've been given, but I think that if a law enforcement officer suffers an injury, to me, that's a visible physical injury. That's very different than if there's just a touching that occurs. And that particular charge results in a lot of pleas, I think, to people pleading to stuff that they didn't commit because they're terrified of the 6-month mandatory minimum. My law partner had to go to trial with a little tiny 110-pound woman who slapped an officer's wrist for a speeding ticket. And she was looking at a 6-month mandatory minimum on a felony. And I think he might have eventually pled to something because they were, worried about the potential consequences. Who wants to roll those dice, right? So I think we need to make some adjustments to that statute because I think it results in a lot of, I think there's a lot of bad cops that often use it to cover what they're doing to avoid the scrutiny. And I know a lot of cops that when I've described these scenarios, they go, some cop charged that? And I go, yes. And they can't believe that a magistrate would actually issue a warrant for something like that. And so the good cops think, tweaking that isn't a big deal because they would never charge it. The officers that like to push people around and manhandle people all the time are the ones that are iffy on that. So then the last thing is we have some, I think we have some interesting proposals on pretextual policing, on profiling.
Can you just quickly explain what a pretext is?
Well, the pretext is when an officer decides to stop somebody for something, but they stop them for something else instead. So, for example, the Washington Post had a story last week about an officer in Fairfax who seemed to smell marijuana all over the place, but only when he saw certain cars. The Supreme Court, though, unfortunately, has held that you can stop somebody for not using their turn signal, even if you really are trying to stop them because it's 1 a.m. in the morning and there's young people in the car and you think you might have a good DUI target, right? So pretextual policing is the idea of just stopping people for things that really aren't safety violations. Nobody's at risk, but you're trying to stop a car to get into that car, get into somebody's pockets, try and see what's going on. So we have a proposal to say that you cannot stop a vehicle. It becomes a secondary offense for things like window tinting, which I don't know how you could tell whether window tinting is too dark or too light unless you're staying next to the window with a tintometer, or for loud exhaust. What's loud or not loud is all, again, in the ear of the beholder. For things like equipment violations that aren't violations of the state inspection code, like if your license plate light is out, the light that you have to have on your license plate, if that's out. And we also have a proposal to say that now that marijuana is a civil infraction, it's no longer criminal, that you can't search somebody's pockets or their car. If all you can say is, I smell something, you can't search their pockets or car unless you can articulate probable cause to believe they've committed another criminal infraction. And given that marijuana is now civil, we believe that that's the case. And I know that I've had some lawyers tell me that between 10 and 20% of the cases they get start off with a marijuana odor allegation. So, those I think are big priorities, I think, right now. And Don, I'm sure Don already has his earned sentence credit bill, I know. And I mean, in addition, by the way, the policing stuff, I think, is on everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to find, by the way, on the policing stuff, I think you're going to find there's a lot more agreement about the policing reforms than people think there are. I mean, I've been talking to law enforcement about the list that we came up with, and a lot of them say, this is stuff we're already trained to do. Mm-hmm. I had a beer with an officer last night. He's like, I've never been trained to do a chokehold. I've never been told to do a chokehold. It's against policy. We're told not to shoot into moving cars. We're told to de-escalate. We are told, to give warnings before we shoot people, when it's possible to do that. We're told to, not escalate situations. I mean, these are things that they're already trained to do. But when you have a police force, like Fairfax County has 1,500 cops, they have a procedural manual that's this big. But I also represent, the town of Quantico, which has 200 people and probably like 3 police officers, or the town of Dumfries that has 10. We have 400 law enforcement agencies in this Commonwealth. Some are very small, and we need to make sure that everybody is following the highest standards, and we don't have these lowest common denominators that are running around not following what are sort of the standard of care policing around the whole country.
Scott, was there anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the marijuana issue is a big deal. I think we got to figure out a way to, number one, we got to expunge a whole lot of stuff related to a lot of these old crimes. I'm hoping that we can look at stuff beyond just marijuana expungements, look at everything. There are some things that if people who, 20 years ago, nothing's happened, I think we need to take a look at how we do expungement. Because at the end of the day, felony convictions and other convictions on your record, they have economic consequences. And we need to look at what the economic impacts are. Because at the end of the day, the whole idea around the whole felony is like, we can work you to death for nothing in jail. That's slavery, the 13th Amendment. It says, unless you're in prison, slavery is illegal unless you're in jail. And so the whole concept of being a felon continues that slavery once you get out, where you can't do the things that you need to do to earn what you are capable of earning, commensurate with your talent. And so that's something that we need to look at. And then on the marijuana deal, I mean, I know people believe that it's prevailing all over, that courts, that states, even when states where marijuana is legal, fully legalized, the police can still stop and search vehicles because they say they smell marijuana. And so that's even in states legalized. So I think Virginia has the opportunity to really do something transformative. We keep using Senator Server as well, word. If we take away the ability to police to say they smell marijuana in the vehicle, because they use that for every search all the time. And it's one of the things that, you get a ticket. If a police officer pulls up and he says, hey, I smell marijuana in your car. Hey, dude, it's legal. I just had a spill here. You might still smell it. So we need to go ahead and decide once and for all if that's going to be a reason that we have people stop. So I'm hopeful that we'll take a look at that this session as well, as we move through some of these things in criminal justice reform.
So just to give people a sense of how big an impact it could have to get rid of the smell of marijuana as probable cause. So during the day, I'm the chief public defender in Arlington County in the city of Falls Church. the most commonly prosecuted misdemeanor in Arlington the past several years, other than driving on a suspended license and reckless driving, has been possession of marijuana. This is a racial justice issue, and I'll tell you why. 9% of Arlington County is Black. 60% of the people who are arrested for pot possession are Black. That is mind-blowing, and that's the kind of thing that needs to stop. And that's the kind of thing that isn't going to stop unless we get rid of the.
And Bradley, I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute and add that all the studies say marijuana use across races that per capita is the same.
Exactly.
We're not smoking more pot, y'all. Y'all don't come to me. We're not smoking more pot.
Yeah.
I was going to add that, but that's in a liberal progressive jurisdiction. You know, think about.
Yeah, God.
They say that's what they say. Yeah.
I mean,
Latte liberals up there. Latte liberals.
in Richmond, it's not even charged that often. I would say the vast majority of my cases that are stopped for the alleged smell of marijuana, they're not even charged with it. They're charged with other things. It's just a pretextual reason to stop and search someone. And that's why it has to go, especially now that marijuana is decriminalized.
So we promised that we would keep our event short tonight, and I want to just get to the point where we tell people how they can get involved. Before I do, we got a slide, Jack. You can put the one up about Justice Forward priorities. I think the advocacy community has y'all's back big time. You'll see that our priorities line up with yours really well. There are a number of others on our list that I know are important to both of you. Senator Serval, I know, Delegate Scott, both of you voted for bills that would have made jury sentencing optional to the defendant, which is people don't understand how big a deal that is. That's the kind of thing we're going to be trying to get people educated on, because there might be no more transformational or transformative bill than that.
What do we want? 6 states or something that still do jury? What we want? We're in the minority of states that
6 states. Yep.
6 states left. Yep. And I think most of them actually do give the defendant the choice.
Even of those 6.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
We just buy ourselves out here.
Yep. So, and then another one, I think that we didn't, this is deserving of its own session, and that's why we're having our own session on it, is a civilian oversight. This, in all candor, is a new issue. I think both of you would agree, civilian oversight is a new issue to the legislature. We're having an event on July 22nd. That we're going to have the Legal Aid Justice Center, the Richmond Transparency and Accountability Project, and the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement involved with that. And you're going to have some of the experts from Virginia who are going to give you a primer on how to do it right. What's the way to do it so that your community can really have a say in how that community is policed. Next week, by the way, July 15th, we're going to have a session on pretextual policing. And then on the 28th, we're going to be talking about the assault and law enforcement statute, which Senator Serval talked about, and also SROs, or police in schools. But before we wrap up, so I want to talk to you about how does regular people, how do they help make an impact? And I guess I'll just ask both of you a question. Does it make a difference when your constituents or other concerned citizens contact you and tell you how they feel about certain issues? Does that make a difference?
I'll defer to the veteran first. Go ahead, Matt.
I think it makes a difference when you contact your own member who you vote for. It especially makes a difference if they know you and they have a relationship with you. If you've taken the time to get to know them, they know who you are, you either do or don't have an expertise, or even just that you care and you're paying attention. I get, thousands of emails from people all over the state. And I tend not to pay as much attention to those because I don't have time to, given I have 1 or 2 staffers now, and they're just overwhelmed responding to my own constituents. But and I also would just say that, don't just send an email. Like, call the office and ask to speak to the member. So few of my constituents actually ask to talk to me or have a meeting or coffee or whatever. But my standing rule tends to be that if it's a constituent, I'll meet with them. I'll talk to them on the phone. At a minimum, I'll probably meet with them. And you'd be surprised how accessible your member is. And so if you do that, you will stand out. And if you tell them these are issues I care about and I'm watching and I'm paying attention, and either I you're happy with where you've been before. I'm not happy, or I'm not happy where the legislature's been. I want to see this happen. The special session's important. It will make a difference to people. So, and that, you know, it's easy to send an email. It takes a lot more time to actually reach out, have a conversation, ask to meet for coffee or a beer or whatever, which is what I like to do. But I'm not a morning person at all. But that makes a difference, 100%.
Delegate Scott, same question to you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like is when I like to humanize everything. You know, I like it when people tell me their stories, what's going on with their loved one, and I'm dealing with folks, the issues that I care about in prison reform. But I also, you know, on economic development, I worked in workforce development forever. When you're dealing with economic development, workforce development, I love those stories too. So I like to actually talk to folks, even if they're not necessarily my constituent. If they're knowledgeable, I want to hear it. And if they're my constituent, I'm definitely living because I don't want to lose any votes. But and I want to, you know, even if I disagree with you vehemently, I will speak with you respectfully. And I think one of the biggest things that people like who care about the issues that Justice Ford cares about is they got to show up. You know, these folks were impressed by people that show up. I mean, and a room full at a hearing of citizens, not lobbyists, not even advocates, just regular people who care about your presence speaks volume. And I know it's difficult, but I think in this age of seeing people out protesting, I found out that people got a lot more time than I thought they did. And so I'm saying right now, don't lose that energy. We got to come to the legislature when we're in session. If we hold hearings, assuming that the world goes back to normal anytime soon, we're not doing anything on Zoom. But even if it's a Zoom call, if they got public comment, plug in that thing, because people know when we understand legislators have their finger on the pulse. The Senate over there, where they only got 40 guys, there's only 40 folks over there. They like to, you know, they run every 4 years. They're supposed to be the cool-headed folks. They don't really spawn anything. It takes them a while. But the House of Delegates is where the people are. We run every 2 years. We're supposed to be connected. So I'm hopeful that there'll be a lot of pressure on the House of Delegates this year from the community to move, because we have an election next November in 21. So when we come up this year in this special session and in this January in 21, we ought to be able to see some of these issues that come up, that folks that elected us to be here, that we've tackled. If we haven't tackled them, then we probably end up going home. But I don't believe in that you run away from the core issues that, you know, that brought you here. I think you got to run to your issues and to your base, to your support, to energize them so they'll come out and keep you there. But if you keep worrying about the boogeyman, which is what I see a lot, then we don't get stuff done, because that fear factor of, you know, offending someone, or, you know, the vocal minority, the Amanda Chases of the world and those nut cases with her, then, you know, we worrying about them, we're going to lose. So we're going to lose anyway. We're going to lose for being spineless. So do something.
Well, I tell you, our experience is that everyone in the entire General Assembly, all the members are very accessible, whether they're constituents or whether we're constituents or not. I think a lot of times having an affiliation with a group like ours helps a little bit. But we had a lobby day in January this year. Over 100 people signed up, which is really good for an issue like ours. And I think we probably had meetings scheduled with maybe half of them, maybe more than that. But then we had drop-ins with almost everyone else. If a member was free, you know, Delegate Scott was free, or Delegate Scott set up a meeting with us, but somebody else, you know, who didn't set up a meeting with us, if they were free, they were going to take the time to you know, hear us out, hear what our issues are, take our literature, you know, and it's incredible how much of an impact you can have just by doing that. So, you know, get engaged. And the way you do that, by the way, the way that you know what issues to get engaged on is by, you know, staying connected with groups like ours. So you should follow us on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, and as of yesterday, we even have Instagram now. So that's a good place to get current information about what's going on in criminal justice reform in Virginia. And then also, if you sign up for a mailing list, and also, you know, on social media, you'll get action alerts. So you know when there's a bill coming up and when we really need your help to get the word out, to make those phone calls, to, you know, drop in on virtual events, to, you know, to send emails. Emails do work sometimes. So do all of that. And then in the same process, I want to, at least with my comments, end where we started, which is, I think the very most important thing for everyone who's interested in these issues is to get informed. We're not going to see meaningful, impactful criminal justice reform unless we know how to do it right, and unless the public knows how to do it right, so they can support the right way to do it. So, again, make sure you're connected to groups like ours and others that are out there: Legal Aid Justice Center, ACLU of Virginia. There are a number of others. And together we'll make this happen. I mentioned the events already, but we also have a series of blog posts or articles on our website. It's going to be a deeper dive into a lot of the issues we talked about tonight, so you can continue to use those as a resource. So before we wrap up, I want to give both of our special guests a closing word. Delegate Scott, how about we start with you?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm the junior member, so I'll start. That's what he was thinking. Yeah, you better go first, buddy. I got a lot on my mind. First of all, I got a call about me moving my chair too much. I got to say I'm moving. So I'm squirming, man. I got ADD or ADHD, one of them. I was undiagnosed. I don't know. So, but anyway, what I wanted to say, man, I think I want to thank you all for having me. I think this is a great call, great conversation. I think it sets the stage for what we need to do when we continue. The House is really soon. We're about to start scheduling joint public hearings of public safety and courts of justice. I like that idea because I think it does what Senator Servell said we didn't do well, which is educate people who may not be attorneys, who may not see this stuff every day. We go to court every day. I got a list I didn't even get to of the stuff that I see in court that's crazy that we need to change. I don't even have time to get to it yet. Probation, indefinite probation. What the hell is that? I mean, we just got a lot of stuff that we need to do, but we got to prioritize. I think there's an opportunity with these public hearings that'll be coming up. Committee hearings, joint committee hearings. People, we may do them remotely. If we do them remotely, people need to log on, speak up, get very active. And I'm hopeful that our advocacy groups will do their part, but we also need individuals to really get hard. That's going to start. I would expect those public hearings to begin in the next week or a week and a half at the latest.
Senator Servell, you're up.
So the Senate Judiciary Committee and Rehab Committee are having their first hearing on Friday at 10 a.m. We have 5 speakers scheduled, but no public input. Sorry, Don. But there's no public input, but we are taking written comments. And so anybody that wants to submit written comments, you need to get them in. The committee will be publishing an email address to send them to, and then all those comments will be distributed to all the committee members. But we're having that meeting, and then we're probably going to have separate rehab and courts meetings after that to talk about specific bill language. And we'll be putting that language out for the public to see and provide input and feedback on it, similar to what we would do during the session. But we'll be doing it online, virtually, trying to get it all done before we get to session. And so we'll have, again, the Judiciary Committee will do the judiciary stuff. The Rehab Committee will do the prison bills. That's their bailiwick. And then the Finance Committee will have another meeting probably right before session to look at everything from a financial perspective. But listen, from my point of view, this is really, I mean, there's no question what's going on is historic. It's kind of hard to understand when you're living history that it's actually going on right now around you. But the public is really in a place where they're looking for leadership and action on these issues. And there's really a moment here we have a chance to actually get some really big stuff done while people are really focused on this problem and want to do something about it. And the special session is going to be the first chance to get some stuff done. And I think our regular session will likely be as well, although the presidential election will be over by then and people will be starting to focus more on the United States Congress and inauguration. By the time we're in session, it's going to be focused on inauguration, and all those inaugural parties are going to be happening, and Congress is beginning coming in, and AOC is going to be dropping all these bills. Everybody's focused on that, and so we need to get done in Virginia as much as we can this special session if we can. And so we need to have everybody sort of put your reach out to your members and tell them that you want to see action now and not just in January. And I think with the public's engagement, with the support, with everybody telling members that, we got your back. If you support this, we'll support you. And then when it's time for re-election, we'll be there for you and we'll support you. And when there's town hall meetings, we'll show up and explain why the old narrative is no good isn't any good any longer. Members need that sense of comfort in order to start voting for things that they've never had to vote on before, never seen before. And so with your help and support, I think we can get it done.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed this. I got nothing else to add. Ashley, anything before we close?
Nope, just thank you both for being such strong advocates for criminal justice, and we look forward to working with you over the session.
Yeah, thanks for all your help. You guys are awesome.
Take care.
Yep.
Good job.
Bye, everyone.